we met this guy who was a settler who had the machine gun on him, and he was talking, and my girlfriend spoke French, so she was talking to his wife, who was also there, who was French, and this man was from the United States. And I'm talking to him, and he said, oh, you need to come live here, all Jews need to come live here. And then he whispered to me and said, look, she's not Jewish, right? Yeah, yes. And he said, look, you might think she loves you, and maybe she thinks she loves you, but they all want to kill us.
Now, I lived in Jerusalem almost 20 years, a city where a third of its population are Palestinians. I never went to any Palestinian neighborhood. I was afraid. Not only I didn't go to any Palestinian neighborhood in Jerusalem or in the West Bank. I even didn't go to any Palestinian village, town that are citizens of Israel. I was afraid of Arabs. I called them at that time Arabs, not Palestinians.
My college roommate named Hannah, my first day of college, we walk in and we start decorating our dorm room, and she hung up a poster that said, "Free Gaza." And something inside of me agreed, because all human beings deserve like freedom and dignity. And I started questioning what was my people's role in not making it free.
I grew up in a family. We were part of a Reformed congregation in suburban St. Louis.
I was born in Romania during World War II, and my family moved to Israel, Palestine in 1950 when I was 6. Of course, I have no memories of the Holocaust because I was a baby.
My mom is Jewish and American. Her grandparents came from Russia and Poland. And my father is Sephardic, and his parents came from Morocco to Israel. And my mother met him on a trip, I think like a Zionist college trip, where they take students to Israel, and he was working at her hotel.
We learned to heavily identify with the state of Israel. When I was in 5th grade at a religious school, we reenacted the Six-Day War. Of course, everybody wanted to play the part of Israel because those are the heroes. I was bar mitzvahed on Masada in Israel.
There were a few years when I lived in Connecticut, and I founded my own supplementary school as a Zionist. This is what I was teaching. I even worked for Hadassah. I wrote for them books to learn Hebrew. Everything was for the Zionists.
I think everybody in the world is kind of attracted to the idea of being the David, the little guy standing up against oppression, against all these giant forces of oppression who are crushing us down. But then everybody also is very attracted to being Goliath, because being very powerful and being able to just crush people at will and exert what you need and what you want is also very attractive. And in a way, identification with Israel, you get to be both at the same time.
Growing up at Hebrew school, I used to collect coins to plant trees in Israel. I used to spend my summers in Israel because that's where my dad is from. And now when I look back, I understand that that was part of the occupation of Palestine, and that planting trees is not neutral. And I think I started to question the state of Israel when I started to question the violence inherent in the state of the United States. I also have seen the way that militarization of Israel has affected masculinity and has affected who my father's become, having to serve. Being a soldier, you dehumanize part of yourself too.
In November 2009, I was at that time 66, and I heard on the radio that two Palestinian families, two Arab families, I thought, I don't know, will be evicted from their homes to the street. I was furious, just because two families were thrown to the streets, that's all. And I heard there were some protests. And I was afraid to go, you know, violence, I don't know. Eventually I did go. And this was the first time in my life that I spoke to Palestinians. It was so shocking to me that I realized, I mean, the invisible walls just broke at once, and I stepped into my country backyard, and I realized that, wow, I know nothing. And just at once, like 180 degrees, I started to learn, to know.
We finally visited our friends who we'd met who are Palestinians who live in Israel, and just got to know them more. They live near a kibbutz. They said that the kibbutz had taken most of what was their land, but they still had some. And at some time, their family, sometime either in the 50s or 60s, they were talking with people in the kibbutz and they got along, and they offered to pretty much give up all their land so they could be part of the kibbutz. And people in the kibbutz agreed with it, and then the Israeli state was just put a firm line. No, Arabs are not allowed to be part of the kibbutz. You can't do that. And it just struck me how practical these people were. They were willing to compromise with the people, and they had no resentment towards Jews. And it was a Muslim family, but every picture on the wall was a picture. There's one picture of the gentleman with Yasser Arafat, and then every other picture was every member of the family sitting on the lap of Santa Claus. Like, these are the people I thought were my enemies, and it just totally changed after that. And it really struck me how unjust the situation is.
My people who experienced a great amount of trauma also inflicted trauma upon Palestinian people, and I guess I started to grapple with what that means and what my role is in stopping that from happening.
I don't know if I'm helping at all. I mean, like, who am I? The situation is really so terrible, but I cannot be silent.